It's February, Iris has been cold, so we decided we are making a cardigan today. And we're not just making a cut and sew cardigan, we are going to be upcycling. We went thrifting recently and found all of these really great sweaters, and we're gonna turn them into a cardigan. Iris, which color cardigan do you think we should make? That one? Which one? Okay, sounds good. We'll go with that one. And this is how the sweater looks right now. So take a good look at it because we are about to chop it up into a cardigan. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this existing cardigan pattern of the month, and we're going to use these two sweaters here to upcycle and turn them into a cardigan. And you can do this with any cardigan pattern, but the pattern I'm using is the cardigan pattern from my Pattern of the Month Sewing Club. And if you want to join or get this pattern, check out the link down below. And when you're thrifting, you want to look for a sweater that is bigger than you. And it can be way bigger than you. Think about it like fabric. The more fabric you have, the easier it's going to be to cut out your pattern. And if you fall in love with a few sweaters that are smaller than you, well, that's okay too. We can take a few sweaters and upcycle them into one cardigan. The first thing you need to do is cut out your paper pattern, and then we're ready to start cutting up our sweaters. And you might be wondering, why do I have two sweaters? Well, I'm going to be using this for rib knit for the cardigan. So a lot of times you can just find a rib knit sweater and cut it up and make the strips of rib knit from it. But if you can't find the right rib knit sweater, you can always just go ahead and buy some rib knit by the yard. Now we're going to start cutting out the cardigan, and I'm going to be starting with the back pattern piece. Since our back pattern piece is on fold, I'm going to fold the sweater so that center back is on fold. So I'm going to be placing my pattern piece right there on center back. I'm gonna line it up right outside that original rib knit that's on the sweater and weight it down. And then I'm just gonna make sure that center back is staying nice and straight here. And then weight this down. You can see up here, it's not gonna wanna lay perfectly flat, but just try and flatten it out the best you can. Make sure you don't have anything extra caught under there. Otherwise, you're gonna be cutting holes in the front of your sweater. So that's feeling nice and flat for me. And now I'm gonna use my rotary cutter and cut it out. I'm gonna start with cutting the center back neck and then work my way around. Now you can see we have our back cardigan piece cut out. So whatever pattern you're using, hopefully my pattern, you need to make sure that that garment you're cutting from is laying perfectly flat and there's no bumps or bubbles of fabric in there. Otherwise, it's not going to turn out the right shape. And if you need help to get it to lay flat, you can always cut open a side seam or a shoulder and really flatten it out. And once you have that pattern piece cut out, whatever you do, do not start stretching and pulling this. The sweater is going to start unraveling and coming apart. So we need to be really careful with these pieces that we cut out until we start serging. Now let's move on to the front cardigan panel. For the front, we need two, so cut two. So I've folded the sweater again. So we're just gonna cut all the way around through both layers so that way we get two fronts. Now both of these front panels are cut out. It's time to move on to the sleeve. And we're gonna use the existing sleeve, and you can see how funky this looks. This is actually the top of the sleeve, and the bottom of the sleeve is straight. I do not love this shape. So we are going to be using our sleeve pattern, and what we're going to do is fold it in half. Now you could cut open the seam, lay it flat. I'm not going to though. And I'm also gonna be using the rib knit on the end here. So we're going to take the sleeve, and since we don't want a seam at the top of the shoulder, we're gonna lay this on here. And you're gonna try and make this line up the best you can. You can see this pattern has this hump up here on the top of your arm. I don't love that. I'm gonna wait till later though to deal with that. So I'm gonna ignore that for now and pretend that doesn't exist. You can see how that hump is popping out of the sleeve. But I am going to cut down the side. We're gonna reshape here, and we do have some space to actually get the top of our sleeve, which is great. So I am going to place this on top of our sweater. Again, make sure you have two layers lined up on any edges that you're dealing with. We're gonna weight this down. Now we're gonna cut away the extra. Let's take a look at our sleeve. So now you can see that we have a sleeve shape here, top of the sleeve, that we can sew into our armhole. And we do have these extra seams in here from the previous sweater design, and that's fine. We're gonna leave that. That's just part of its charm. Think of them like style lines. And once you have one sleeve cut out, you do the same thing to the other one. So now I have both sleeves cut out. Don't they look weird? And this bump that's happening here is because of the elbow. So when we try it on later, we'll decide if we want to do anything with that. Now it's time to grab that rib knit sweater in your rib knit pattern pieces. We're gonna cut out the rib knit. This is also a great hack. If you can't find the color rib knit you're looking for at the fabric store, go to the thrift store, get a rib knit sweater. Duh, right? When I'm cutting this out, I'm not going to be using my cuff pattern because I left the original rib knit cuffs on the sleeve. Now, you could choose to do that or not do that, totally up to you. So now I'm gonna cut these rib knit pieces out. Notice that one is cut 2 and the other one is just cut 1. Now we have all the pieces cut out to sew up this cardigan. First thing we're going to do is serge together the shoulders front to back. That's right, we're going to be using the serger with this project. It is advisable to use a serger for this project because the fabric is so stretchy. The serger is going to bind together all those raw knit edges that we created when we were cutting into the sweaters. Now, if you're using a sturdier knit, you can totally use your sewing machine, use your stretch stitches on it, finish your edges with zigzags or overcasts, but it is advisable to be using the serger for this. And you're going to want to test out your scraps on your serger because all these knit sweaters, they all stretch differently. And there's a good chance you're going to want to change your settings, definitely make that differential feed higher. And if you need help using your serger and getting to know it, well, make sure you check out my online serging course. There'll be a link down below for it. So we're gonna serge that shoulder together. We're gonna open it up. And then what we're going to do is set in our sleeve. We're gonna serge our sleeve from end to end right into that shape there. And we're gonna do this on both sides. So I've changed my settings and I've tested out my stitch and it's nice and flat. So now I'm ready to serge together these shoulders. I'm gonna cut off just a little at the edge to make sure I'm actually catching all of those raw edges that we cut into. And now we're moving on to the sleeve. When you're doing this, just make sure you keep everything out of the way. Make sure you're not stretching your knit. You get to any seams, go real slow with your serger. Now we have the shoulders and the sleeves put together. Let's take a look at it. So you can see we have the shoulders here serged together. And then you can see here that we have the top of the sleeve set into the armhole. So you can really see it starting to come together. And now right now I have it inside out or right sides together, however you like to look at that. Now what we're going to do is clip together the side seam, lining up the underarm seam, and then we're going to clip together the underarm of the sleeve. And then what we're going to do is just pull this straight and we're gonna serge from the bottom all the way down to the end of the sleeve. Starting at the hem, I'm gonna work my way all the way down to the bottom of the sleeve. So you can see this is really coming together and taking shape. It's looking like a whole new style. I've got a real quick tip here for you. So if your seams are getting wobbly, you can't get them to lay flat, what you want to do is serge in a piece of seam tape there. It's going to reinforce that seam and prevent it from stretching out and getting wobbly. Or what you can do is cut some strips of water-soluble interfacing, preferably the one that's not clear, so the one that's a little more sturdy, and you can put that on the back and the front of the sweater when it goes into the serger, and it's gonna help keep it stronger so it's not like stretching out while you're serging. But make sure you're changing your stitch length, your differential feed, and your foot pressure so that way your knit isn't stretching out. Okay, so now back to finishing up this cardigan. So at the edge of this sweater, you can see that if I pull it just a little bit, all these knits want to start coming undone. And we don't want that to happen when we're attaching our rib knit. So right now what I want you to do is just serge all the way around the opening, so that way it's not going to unravel and fall apart when we're attaching our rib knit. And now you can really see how that serged edge is keeping together that open knit. Now it's time to sew our pieces of rib knit together so they're one big circle. So we're going to serge the long sides to the short sides to connect it there. And then what we're going to do is take the two long ends, and then we're also going to serge those together. So that way we end up with one big circle of rib knit. Now we have a circle of rib knit. So now what we're going to do is take our rib knit and fold it wrong sides together. So we're folding it in half so we have a clean seam on both sides. Now when we clip this to the cardigan, we're going to be clipping it to the wrong side of the cardigan, lining up the edges. Let me show you how. I'm going to be starting at center back. So you want to make sure you find your center back on the neck and line up the seam of the two big pieces serged together. So that is going to go at the center back. I'm going to put 2 clips here so it doesn't move. Okay. Now what we want to do is find the other seam on the long piece, and we are going to clip this one to our side seam. And then what we're going to do is line up our rib knit all the way around the neckline, clipping it. So you're gonna get this rib knit here clipped all the way around the cardigan. So I have the rib knit all clipped around the cardigan. And now when you are putting this on, I want you to give the rib knit just a little bit of stretch and then clip. And all the rib knit stretches differently. So if you end up with too much by the time you've clipped and you're at your side seam, you can always just cut some off and, you know, keep on clipping. Just make sure it fits and make sure it's a little smaller than your actual sweater. So again, just make sure you're lining up that back rib knit piece with the side seams, and then everything is going to look gorgeous. And again, this rib knit piece is smaller than the sweater opening here. It is supposed to be like that, so that way it gets a nice fit when it turns over to the other side. So let's go serge this rib knit on. So I have everything lined up, and as you go through, make sure you have all 3 layers lined up. If you cut off a little, that's okay. Go real slow where you get these bulky seams. Remove your clips as you get to them. Overlap your serge off, and now we're done with that step. Our cardigan rib knit is looking so good, but we have a few more steps left because we have to sew it down on the outside of the cardigan. So when this is finished, this rib knit is going to be on the outside. We don't want to see that pink there. So what we're going to do is understitch the seam allowance. So we're going to push the seam allowance towards the sweater, and we're going to stitch right here. And this is going to help keep that sweater piece to the inside. So I'm using a broken zigzag stitch. I've made the stitch really long. I've also made the pressure less on my sewing machine. The pressure on my machine is only at 1.5 for the foot. And then what we're going to do after that is flip it to the outside, and then we're going to stitch it down right here. We're going to take the binding and we're going to flip it over, but make sure the sweater is not coming to the outside. We want to fold right at that seam, and then what we're going to do is add the same stitch to the edge of the binding on the left side. Make sure you're not stretching your sweater when you do this, otherwise it's going to end up all wobbly. You can back stitch or use your fix button. I'm going to use my fix button. And there we go. And it should sew into this knit really nice for you. And again, I'm using that broken zigzag stitch with a stitch length of 15. My width is 2. Pressure on my foot is 0.5. And then we're going to have this beautiful finish of the red rib knit on the pink sweater. Let's take a look at our beautiful binding. So you can see how nice this binding lays on the outside of the cardigan, and then what a nice finish it gives the inside. It is such a clean, professional looking finish. Now our sweater is basically ready to wear, but you have to decide, how do you want it to close, or do you want it to close? Are you going to use a sweater clip? Are you going to put 3 buttons down the front like I recommend, or maybe just 1? Totally up to you. And you have options for pockets as well. You can choose one of those pocket patterns that I have if you're using my pattern, and just go ahead and put that on the front, or maybe you don't want a pocket. In this one, I'm not putting a pocket on, and I have a special video for you next week to show how we are going to jazz this up even further. So I'm gonna go add those buttons and then we can try it on. I found really fun heart buttons that match perfect, and I added some buttonholes over here. And if you need help adding buttonholes in knit fabric, make sure you check out my video on that. I'll put a link down below. Look at how awesome those buttons are for this cardigan. I love it. And this rib knit we used from the other sweater looks great. I just love how chunky it looks. And this time I left the existing rib knit at the bottom of the sleeve, but you could totally use that rib knit cuff pattern and make it match the rib knit around the cardigan. And here's our upcycled cardigan on. Do you remember that big pink sweater? And then we had that red one where we cut the rib knit from? Well, here it is transformed. We now have a really fun cardigan, buttons up. It's got a beautiful curved bottom, and we've got that V-neck as well. So just like that, we took 2 sweaters and we made it an awesome new one. And we can't forget these amazing buttons up the front. I'm in love with them. I think it really gives it a nice touch. And if you want to use the pattern I did to upcycle your sweaters, you're gonna have to head over to the Sewing Club and you can download it through that. You might be wondering, what's the Sewing Club? Well, it's an online community that we've created. You get sewing lessons and fitting lessons with every single pattern. So that way you can make clothes that fit you great. And you also get access to our sewing Discord. So if you have questions about how to fit something, what kind of fabric should you be using, maybe you're just looking for a recommendation, or you want to show off your finished project, the Discord community is there for you. And if you don't know what Discord is, it's basically like a Facebook group, and you get to hang out with everybody virtually. It's a great way to build your wardrobe. Thanks so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today. If you have any questions about this project, leave it down below and I'll get back with you as soon as I can. And I'd love to know, what upcycles would you like to see this year? Leave that down below as well. And if you're not already a subscriber to Sewing Anastasia, well, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for watching today. These videos are for you guys. And don't forget, you can come on into my studio in Chicago and take sewing classes with me, or you can take classes online. There's links down below for both of those. If you want to know what's going on in the studio, well, make sure you check out my Instagram, and especially my Instagram stories. Thank you so much for watching today. Bye.